to the representative of Namibia.
Thank you, Mr. President. The adoption of Resolution 1325 23 years ago was done with a clear vision: to promote women's participation in efforts and processes aimed at pursuing peace and security, to enable the prevention of all forms of violence against women and girls, to support the protection of women in conflict and non-conflict situations, and to situate women not only as victims, but also as key actors in the development of gender-responsive peace and security policies and programming. Namibia's commitment to the WPS agenda is anchored in our full appreciation that the WPS agenda is applicable to all situations, non-conflict, conflict, and post-conflict, as it promotes the equal participation of women and men in peace processes and development efforts at all levels, and further calls for the provision of equal opportunity and enjoyment of economic and social justice by all. Namibia condemns the ongoing suffering, violence, and abuse of women and children in all conflicts raging across the world. In this connection, we express the need for an end to hostilities in all conflicts and to put stronger emphasis and support to peace processes through dialogue and diplomacy. In such processes, women are not only to be discussed as victims, but indeed as direct stakeholders. Their contribution to finding solutions to peace and security is essential and must be encouraged. As a practical tool to support this, Namibia, in the run-up to the 20th anniversary of the adoption of Resolution 1325, launched the International Women's Peace Center, taking on the challenge of further conceptualizing and operationalizing the concept of women's influence in peace processes. Mr. President, for the full implementation of the WPS agenda to occur, the full and meaningful participation of women in the political, economic, and social aspects of states and societies also needs to occur. The inclusion of women in traditional security institutions alone will not help to ameliorate the gaps of implementation. The persistent pushback against women's rights poses a significant obstacle to achieving gender equality worldwide. Discrimination, cultural norms, and systemic biases continue to limit women's access to education, economic opportunities, and political participation. This resistance to women's empowerment impedes progress in gender equality, perpetuating inequalities. As we look towards the future, and as we prepare for the 25th anniversary in 2025, we appreciate the broad mainstreaming of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 and the implementation of the WPS agenda. I urge us all to translate rhetoric into tangible benefits by developing and implementing comprehensive national action plans, investing in capacity building and gender-responsive budgeting, enacting legal and policy reforms which include the use of quotas, targets, and incentives to increase women's participation, promoting supportive environments, and collecting sex-disaggregated data to track progress. These measures collectively empower women's active participation in peace and security processes while safeguarding their well-being, fostering gender equality, and advancing the goals of WPS initiatives. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Namibia for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. President, and let me start by thanking Brazil for convening this important debate. I also want to thank the briefers for this morning very precious inputs and views. Portugal aligns itself with the statement delivered by the European Union and the groups of friends of women, peace and security. Mr. President, it is imperative to look at Resolution 1325 and take stock of the evolution in the several dimensions it covers: the promotion of women's access to decision-making positions, gender equality, and the protection of women and girls from violence during and after conflict, and the adoption of a gender perspective to prevent and mitigate the impact of conflicts on women and girls. There are remarkable initiatives that foster the achievements of some of these aims, as the shared commitment on WPS, so far signed by 16 Security Council member states, the Uniform Gender Parity Strategy for Women in Peacekeeping, and the Global Alliance of Regional Networks of Women Mediators. However, huge gaps persist as women underrepresentation from peace and security has not deeply changed. Despite the efforts of the Secretary General on the gender balance representations, women inclusions in informal peace talks is still incipient or entirely lacking. The percentage of women in UN-led peace talks has decreased for the last 2 years. The percentage of peace agreements that include provisions on gender equality or women's rights is still meager. Therefore, Mr. President, we need to redouble our efforts to achieve women's full, equal and meaningful participation as peace negotiators, mediators and signatories of peace agreements. Second, in a world shattered by more and more conflicts and crises around the world, it is essential to ensure that WPS initiatives translate into concrete changes for local female population and that their safety is guaranteed, including for those more exposed to violence as human rights defenders and journalists. The protection of human rights in conflict situations is fundamental, and we need to mainstream a gender perspective in responding effectively to an increasing security threats. Mr. President, in Portugal, we are preparing now our 4th National Action Plan for Women, Peace and Security. We have been introducing the dimension of the Resolution 1325 in all areas of political activity, resulting in several national strategies on gender equality and the prevention and elimination of gender-based violence with impact on our foreign policy in bilateral and multilateral relations, as well as in our development cooperation. We believe that the empowerment of women and girls demands a special focus on education that must be complemented by awareness campaigns that also include men and boys to dismantle gender stereotypes and bias. We have committed to increase the number of training on WPS, particularly for the National Detachment Forces or personnel participating in international peacekeeping missions, together with the dissemination of codes of conduct. To conclude, Mr. President, let me underline that ensuring the meaningful participation of women in public life and decision-making is not only a moral obligation, but also an essential driver of peace. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Portugal for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at the outset, I would like to express appreciation for Brazil for holding this annual open debate that is becoming more and more relevant against the backdrop of the proliferation of conflicts that are having disproportionate impacts on women and girls across the world. My delegation thanks also the briefers for their input this morning, and we take note of the report presented by the Secretary General and the updates contained therein. We are deeply concerned and alarmed by the exponential rise in the number of women and girls living in what the report described as conflict-affected countries, by almost 50% more than in 2017.
All right, listening in here to the UN Security Council as they discuss the latest in the Middle East. Thanks so much, as always, for being here with us on Live Now from Fox. I'm Lexi Petrovich, always bringing you all of the top stories from international headlines to local news to all of the big headlines in the sports world as well. And the Arizona Diamondbacks continue their incredible playoff run as they stun the Phillies in Game 7 of the NLCS. They've now clinched their ticket to the World Series, where they'll be taking on the Texas Rangers. Let's pull up this tweet here. We've been seeing a lot of social media activity talking about this World Series matchup, and to talk even more about it, we have Fox 10's Richard Saenz in studio with us. Richard, wow, if I had told you 1 month ago, 2 months ago, that the Diamondbacks would be in the World Series, could you have believed it?
No, I would have taken your keys away until you can't drive home because you're under the influence of something. Because I just wouldn't. It's still hard to believe even now. Like when that happened last night, I was like, the D-backs are going to the World Series. It's been such a pleasant surprise. Like we knew this team was going to be better this year than they were last year, and especially the year before. This was going to be a step in the right direction, but this is so ahead of schedule. I mean, some of these guys are so young. Corbin Carroll is going to be the Rookie of the Year. He better be. He's 23 years old. Gabby Moreno, the catcher who had a big hit, he's 23. Brandon Pfaadt, the guy who pitched Game 7 with the season on the line, is only 25. He turned 25 on October 15th. So it's just been one big surprise after another. And it's funny that, they got off to such a great start. And you were like, wow, that's great. They're doing well. And then they went into a bit of a lull. And you're thinking, oh boy, I hope they make the playoffs at least. Then they have to fight to make the playoffs. And I think that helped them because they were having to fight for weeks before the regular season even ended just to get to the postseason. So they were kind of in postseason mode once the playoffs started.
Yeah, what an incredible accomplishment, and so many excited fans. Understandably, this is their first World Series appearance since 2001, by the way, which is incredible in itself. And Richard, both of these teams lost 100 games last year. Now they're both in the World Series. They're both wild card teams too. What a difference that a year can make, right?
Yeah, and what a difference the wild card can make, right? Because just a couple years ago, MLB added the third wild card team, and it's cool because now you're seeing teams like Texas and Arizona that hadn't been, in the playoffs for a while, much less in the World Series. Texas has never won one. Of course, Arizona won one in 2001. So it's great to see a whole new generation of D-back fans experience this, and it's neat to see some new blood, so to speak, in the World Series, even though the Rangers did it with a much bigger payroll than the D-backs have. And I think the D-backs are a little bit more ahead of schedule than the Rangers planned on being.
And all eyes, of course, are on the first game of the World Series. That's on Friday in Arlington. What can we expect from this matchup? You talk about all of this young talent. Who are you going to be watching the closest, and what do you think we can expect with the outcome here?
It's funny, I'm a big boxing guy, right? And they say styles make fights. And I think what's going to make this series so interesting is they're so different offensively. When it comes to the Texas Rangers, they're all about the long ball. They're all about home runs and showing their power at the plate, where the D-backs play what's called small ball. And by that I mean they'll get a guy on base, then they'll bunt him over to get him on second, or they'll try to steal or hit and run, use their speed to manufacture a run. And that's what the D-backs did in Game 7, where they get guys on base and they create havoc, right? Chaos is what they call it. Embrace the chaos. They're creating chaos. And Corbin Carroll is the guy that I'm going to keep my eye on because he had a hell of a game in Game 7. He had 3 hits, 2 steals, the second youngest player to ever do that in the playoffs since Ty Cobb. I mean, that's just unbelievable stats there. And it's amazing what speed can do when you get guys that are fast on base, because now the catcher has to worry about, is this guy going to steal on me? The pitcher has to worry about, okay, is this guy getting too big of a lead? And it throws off their concentration because they're not worried about the batter because they got a guy on base that's causing problems.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and I'm going to see if our producer Matt can put up that tweet, formerly Twitter, now X, asking about who's going to win it again. Matt, if we could get that up here, that would be great. There it is. All right, Richard, I'm going to leave you with this question. 22 years ago, the D-backs made it to the World Series. Will they win it all again?
Yes, I think so, and especially because people are counting them out. Nobody thought they were going to make the playoffs, right? One. Then they're like, well, the Brewers are tough, and especially on the road, they got to go to Milwaukee and beat them. They swept them. Then it's the Dodgers. There's no way they can beat their big brother, right? The Dodgers always beat them down. They had just beaten Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly in the regular season big time. Then they sweep them, making MLB history with 4 home runs in 1 inning. Then there's no way they can beat the Phillies. I mean, especially 2 games in Philadelphia in a row. And Philly hadn't lost at home all postseason long. They do that. So, yeah. I am a believer. Now it's not like, are they going to win? It's how they're going to win. When they get behind, I'm like, oh, great. They got them right where they want them. They're going to come back. They're the answer backs for a reason.
Yeah, not to mention beating the Phillies in Philadelphia in Game 7, too. On top of that, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Fox 10's Richard Saenz joining us here in studio. Richard, thanks so much. We're excited to see what shakes out.
Anytime.
All right, let's step away for another quick commercial break. We still have much more to come, more live reports also on deck here. We'll be right back. Welcome back into Live Now from Fox. As always, thanks so much for being here with us as we take you through all of these major stories, live looks, live events that you should know of on this Wednesday. Well, U.S. Customs and Border Protection confirmed to Fox News that there have been more than 23,000 known gotaways so far this month. Now, gotaways are migrants who have slipped through the border and were never caught. Some Texas sheriffs, though, say that that count is actually very low. Let's bring in Fox's Chelsea Torres, who's joining us live from Crystal City, Texas. And Chelsea, tell us a little bit more about what the sheriff is saying specifically about the gotaway situation.
County says that he doesn't believe there's a clear formula for the estimate number of gotaways, and he says that's because his deputies are chasing vehicles 3 to 4 times a day with smugglers picking up these gotaways. Now, Zavala County is about an hour or less from the border, and Sheriff Silvio Salinas says he's seen a growing trend dealing with migrants crossing the border illegally. He says his deputies mostly catch gotaways in car chases. These people on the run are typically single men, anywhere from 15 to 30 years old. They'll stay in stash houses or in the South Texas brush and wait for a human smuggler to come pick them up. Sheriff Salinas says some smugglers are even as young as 13 years old, and he's noticing many are not even documented. With a payday of $500 to $2,000 a person, smugglers come from all over the country, usually in stolen vehicles. But the sheriff's office does have limited resources. If a car chase does turn deadly, the county's ambulance and funeral services are limited. Not to mention, more deputies are focused on a car chase instead of serving community needs. Sheriff Salinas says the number of gotaways has been growing over the years, and his deputies are not always able to catch them.
Now we don't have a clue of who's coming and who's going. And then we don't have access to other countries to see if they're criminals or not. But the government is the overseer of the immigration things, and something needs to be done. Not just talked about it.
Texas did create a gotaway task force just last year, and over a dozen states across the country have sent resources to help. However, it is expected that this year will surpass 2022's estimated number of 600,000 gotaways just from this past year. In Crystal City, Texas, Chelsea Torres, Lexi, back to you.
All right, Chelsea, thanks so much for that update. All right, giving you a live look now at the U.S. Capitol. Obviously, some major news on Capitol Hill today. The 4th time seems to be the charm after several weeks of chaos on Capitol Hill. Representative Mike Johnson, the Republican from Louisiana, was officially elected House Speaker today. And already the House is busy getting to work introducing their first piece of legislation involving the Israel-Hamas conflict. We want to take you out. There were several moments that we heard from lawmakers reacting to this news, also hearing from Johnson himself. We want to play out this moment, though, on Capitol Hill earlier today after Johnson was officially introduced as the new House Speaker. Let's listen.
Here in the United States House of Representatives, to a family man, a hard-working man, a Baptist man, a Southern man, a son of a firefighter's household, to the gentleman from the great state of Louisiana and the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you all. First, a few words of gratitude. I want to thank Leader Jeffries. I do look forward to working with you on behalf of the American people. I know we see things from very different points of view, but I know that in your heart you love and care about this country and you want to do what's right. And so we're going to find common ground there, all right? I want to express my great thanks for our Speaker Emeritus, Kevin McCarthy. Kevin has dedicated over 2 decades of his life to selfless public service, 16 of those years in this House. And you would be hard-pressed to find anybody who loves this institution more or has contributed more to it. He is the reason we're in this majority today. His impact can never be overstated, and I want to thank him for his leadership, his friendship, and the selfless sacrifice that you and Judy have made for so many years. You helped build it, Kevin, and we owe you a great debt of gratitude. I want to thank the dedicated and overworked staff of this beleaguered House. They accept praise so stoically. But Miss Susan Cole, our House reading clerk, and yes. Listen, all the clerks and all the staff, you know, they're terribly overworked. This has been a grueling process, but they have served an integral role in keeping our republic, and we thank them for that service. I know we all do. I want to thank my dedicated wife of almost 25 years, Kelly. She's not here. We couldn't get a flight in time. This happened sort of suddenly. But we're going to celebrate soon. She spent the last couple of weeks on her knees in prayer to the Lord, and she's a little worn out. We all are. I want to thank our children, Michael and Hannah and Abby and Jack and Will. All of our children sacrifice. All of them do, and we know that. And there's not a lot of perks to being a member of Congress's kid, right? And so I want to thank all of your families as well for what they endure and what they've had to endure for the last few weeks. We've been here a while. Yeah. I want to thank my faithful mother, Jeannie Johnson, who bore me at the age of 17. And my brothers, Chris and Josh, and my sister, Laura, and all their families, and all of our extended family. In Louisiana, family's a big deal, and we got a bunch of them. I especially want to thank all the extraordinary people of the great state of Louisiana. We have never had a Speaker of the House hail from our state. And so they've been lifting us up. I thank the people of Louisiana for the opportunity to serve you in Congress, and I'm humbled by your continuous support. We will make you proud. To my colleagues, I want to thank you all for the trust that you have instilled in me to lead us in this historic and unprecedented